On the 15th of November 1968, the Irish Rose left the port of Dublin on its way to West Africa. The ship carried a load of food and other supplies for the victims of the Nigeria-Biafra War, and its cargo included milk powder, salted fish, potato flake, tin meat, blankets, clothing and medical supplies, all of them donated by the people of Ireland. The Irish Rose was the third shipload of supplies sent out of Ireland in the last few months through the agency of the Joint Biafra Famine Appeal. The Irish contribution has been a part, and a very important part, of the stream of goods and money that have been channeled into Biafra through the nightly airlift. It's no exaggeration to say that during the past 6 months, these night flights to Uli and the ships that provisioned them have kept a whole people alive.
On the 30th of May 1967, the independence of the Republic of Biafra was declared. I won't say that a new country was added to the map, since few map makers thought it worth their while bothering with the country which seemed certainly doomed to early annihilation. But today, the Republic of Biafra still survives, despite the loss of 5/6 of their territory, the loss of all their big towns, despite 18 months of continuous warfare, despite the death of hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of their fellow citizens. The people of Biafra are still independent. The roads are thronged with refugees. Hunger and poverty are everywhere. One thing alone remains undiminished: the sheer naked will to survive.
Every aspect of life in Biafra today is dominated by the fact of war. At Esnahita, for instance, Mass is usually said in the open air. The church is far too small to hold the congregation, especially since everyone wants to attend the earliest Mass for fear of the bombers that come over as soon as the sun is fully risen. Today is a feast of Our Lady, and there's especially large attendance. The sermon is in praise of the Uma Mary girls, the members of the Sodality of Our Lady.
And our own Mary girls at the moment are engaged in just that type of work. Many of them are helping in the feeding centres.
More than half of the people of Biafra are Christians, and among them Catholics form by far the largest group. The foundations of the church among the Igbo people were laid by an Irishman, Bishop Shanahan, in the early years of this century. His work was continued by other Irish priests and nuns, and they built up an impressive network of churches, convents and schools extending over the whole Igbo territory. Nearly all of them belonged to Bishop Shanahan's own order, the Holy Ghost Fathers, or to the sisterhood he founded to work here, the Holy Rosary Nuns. The outbreak of the war brought many problems for the missionaries. As the federal Nigerian troops advanced, the Igbo people fled in front of them, and the priests and nuns who had worked with the Igbos moved with them. Some of these displaced missionaries have since returned home, but enough have remained to ensure that all the missions and convents in Biafran-held territory are fully staffed. The emphasis of their work has changed greatly, however, and with all their schools and colleges closed, they find that most of their time is spent in bringing relief to the sick and hungry among their people. In the little village of Amimo, the Uma Mary girls are celebrating the feast day in their own way. Since the fall of the town of Owerri, Amimo has become the centre of administration for what is left of the Owerri diocese. Bishop Joseph Whelan, the Bishop of Owerri, moved here after the capture of the city in September. and he was joined here a few days later by the nuns from the Holy Rosary Hospital at Emakuku.
Well, I felt very happy that the nuns took the same decision that we did. They decided that it was their place to stay with the people. And even when they evacuated Emakuku Hospital, which was their first foundation in Owerri, and we called it the mother of all the churches, when they evacuated their big hospital, they came down here to Emimo, and 6 have actually remained on, 2 of whom are sister doctors. And they usefully put down their time now looking after the sick, visiting the bush, visiting the camps.
What effect has the war had on your relationship with the people here? I understand at the beginning of the war that things were rather unpleasant for the missionaries.
They were unpleasant because all white men were identified with Britain and Britain was the enemy. But people soon began to see that we, the missionaries, were staying with our people, that we were anxious to help them, that we were a consolation to them. So they welcome us now, as you can see here today.
And also, of course, you're a provider of food.
Oh, we are providers of food for them. We have our feeding centres, and we have helped in a big way to overcome the famine.
When you left the Diocese of Owerri, or rather the town of Owerri, you left it at a time when it was very hopeful for the future, just building your cathedral. What were the circumstances of your leaving, actually?
Well, the military circumstances were that our own army had no arms or ammunition to defend the town, so the town fell really without a shot. And our people had evacuated on the Friday and the Saturday. Sunday morning after Mass for some of the military, I left myself. And that was one of the saddest experiences of my life, because for 20 years I have been bishop here and built up the diocese, built up a cathedral, a whole education centre, a whole centre of administration. Then in one day it's all lost.
One of the few things salvaged from the fall of Owerri was this machine for making altar breads. The machinery was imported from Italy just before the war began and has been in continual use ever since. The war has obviously made no difference to the deep faith of the Igbo people. Working at full capacity, these girls can produce 250,000 communion hosts every month. But even at that, they only barely manage to keep pace with the needs of the Owerri diocese, and the other 4 dioceses in Biafra have to provide their own supply. The nuns from Emakuku Hospital are now living in a small house at Emimo that was once a teacher's residence. From here, the sister doctors set out each day to visit the refugee camps in the neighbourhood. In the last year, the population of Emimo has jumped from 12,000 to more than double that number, as the refugees have continued to flood into the district. The sisters, who are refugees themselves, can sympathise with their plight. Do you remember much of the journey? Was there tremendous congestion on the road?
Well, for 2 days before we left Emakuku, the refugees were on the road day and night. Cars were absolutely whizzing past all night. Then most of the refugees were travelled by foot, as they say, or on bicycles. And it was usually a man wheeling the bicycle and a baby on the back, or the mother on the back with a baby on her lap and a baby on her back. And then another baby on the handlebars, and they usually had a goat or 2 attached to the back of the bicycle. And that was a steady stream all along. It was just pathetic. Even some of the mothers just couldn't take the whole of their families and lost some of the children on the way, because there was a lot of bombing these few days, you see. And they would be walking along the road, and the next thing the jet would come overhead and everybody ran for bush, and in the scurry they often lost their children. And we got 2 of children that were just left behind like that on our way to Emimo.
And you took them here and
we
kept
took them here,
in
Father, and kept them for a while. We haven't got a hospital here now, we just do bush work. But we kept them for a while because we have a few beds in the boys' school. We keep bad patients. And when these children got a bit better, we moved them to Amibo Hospital.
So you've been completely uprooted from your hospital and you've had to adjust to a new kind of life. What are you doing here in Emimo?
Well, we had to form our policy when we came to Emimo, you see, because There were 6 of us, and we had been used to a very well-run hospital. We had a training school for general nurses and for midwives. And after much consultation with parish priests and the bishop and the welfare officers and the government, we decided that we would go in for social work and, you know, village visitation in a big way. So we decided that we would first do this area of Emimo, which comprises of 5 villages, and each village has about 7 compounds, you see. And in each of these compounds there are, well, anything between 600 and 1,000 people. So we decided that we would see everybody in each compound, whole families together.
The refugee camp at Ugiri is only about 4 miles from Emimo, but this is the first time that they've had a visit from a doctor. Understandably, it's not too easy to keep them in an orderly line as they await their turn to be examined.
These 2 have worm, these 2 diarrhea, these 2 cough. This one has cough and diarrhea also. This one, the skin is